Hi, my name is Mary Shenouda, and I'm on Rebuilding the Beast with Festus Azili. And we're going to talk about me being the paleo chef and fat fudge and all things that I do to make sure myself and my clients remain beasts.
Hey guys, welcome to Rebuilding the Beast. I'm your host, Festus Azili, NBA player turned podcast host. And on this show, I'm going to have a lot of my inspiring friends come on to share with you their rebuilding journeys. I hope you can take the tips from their lives and apply it to your life as well. Oh, and don't forget to hit subscribe, like, comment, share with a friend. All the things. All right, I'll see you guys soon. Welcome to the studio. You are christening the studio at the crib right now.
It's an honor.
Thank you.
All good energy. All championship winning energy in this room.
Yes. You and my guys with the Golden State Warriors. You're working with some of the guys.
I'm working with a guy in the Golden State Warriors. Yeah, I have. I think I have like 15 clients now, and then right now, a lot of my energy and time and focus bias is with someone on the Golden State Warriors.
Yes, and you feel like we can go all the way, huh?
I do, beyond reasonable doubt.
Yes.
When is this coming out? Is this coming out after or before?
Well, we'll see. You know what this podcast is about?
What I've gathered is your backstory, and this podcast is a premise of how people are beasting out there.
Absolutely.
In the most simplest form.
It's their journey to becoming. And you are Paleo Chef, as we know you on Instagram, Mary Shenouda. I know a little bit of your story about how, you found paleo as a way to help you after, being sick and things like that. You mind if we go into all that? How you became a chef and all?
Sure. So my background is actually corporate technology for 10 years in San Francisco, originally from the Bay. And becoming a private performance chef is not something I sought out. You told me that's what I was going to do as a kid. I liked cooking, but it's not the thing that I was deliberate about. But it's sort of like listening to the calls that come in and following the signs. So I was sick from second grade through age 25. And it started with migraines in second grade, vomiting, hormone issues. I had an incident in grade school where I had a terrible migraine. I put my head down on the desk. I got in trouble for that. They sent me to the nurse. I didn't have a fever. So they think that you're not telling the truth about being sick. And then I start vomiting. And I had this feeling of like betrayal from the adults around me for not taking my word for it. And then they called my mom, and my mom has migraines. And so she understood that I was really having a migraine. But that was very normal for me to have headaches of that sort. And so going through school in that way, getting to junior high, I sort of accepted that pain is my normal. And I remember like bargaining with God if I'm going to be in this much pain, please tell me somebody somewhere else is suffering less. Like there has to be a meaning or a reason for why I have to be in pain all the time. And I didn't want it to affect my livelihood, like going to birthday parties, playing sports. I would stay until the moment I couldn't see anymore because I didn't want to miss out on things in life. Like when I played basketball in junior high, my coach knew that I had these issues. So I would be sitting sidelined with a head wrap on for that pressure. And I would tap her because I would feel good for a moment. And she'd put me in, and I'd take the head wrap off, be in the game, couple of plays, and then I would feel the pain come back and the eyesight start to go, and I'd look at her and she'd take me out. And she like worked around that for me. And those are just examples of how I had to somehow still have a livelihood while being in consistent pain.
Like this is migraines all the time.
Headaches every day, migraines 2 or 3 times a week, and then like joint issues, hormone issues. And then this went on through high school. I'm actually a high school dropout, dropped out as a junior. I played varsity tennis in high school. I just didn't feel like being in school anymore. There's like not crazy story with it. I just was like, I don't want to be here anymore. And I went straight into a corporate environment. They did not know my age. I didn't go out of my way to disclose that. And by the time they found out my age, I was already a top performer with quota. So they weren't going to fire someone who is performing so well. But in that environment, you have to not just be as good as your peers, but better than your peers because you're 10 years, 15 years younger than them. You're a female on the team. And if you don't feel good, they're like, oh, did a boy hurt you? And it's like, oh. So I'd sit there at my desk with sunglasses on and like work through things. I'd take naps under my desk. I asked for a stand-up desk so I could do pacing to help with blood flow. Again, just this is my normal. And ER visits were at least once a month. I sort of expected them. I knew when a migraine would get that bad, I would end up vomiting until I'd pass out from dehydration. And then somebody would find me. I'd be taken to the hospital. They assume you're on drugs. So they're asking you what you took because they think you're overdosing. You're trying to swear up and down it's just a migraine. Again, the feeling of betrayal. You're going to doctor appointments for your migraines. They can't pinpoint what it is. They think it's psychosomatic. All of those medications that were unnecessary, false diagnosis. And then it wasn't until I always get the time wrong. I think it's like 24 or 25 was my age where I was in the ER yet again. And I hate, they give you morphine and all these other drugs via IV. And I don't like how it feels. It actually doesn't help with the pain. It just knocks you out. So you can be asleep long enough for the migraine to run its course. But it creates massive anxiety in my system. And then you have this like hangover. And I didn't want to go through that anymore. So I got really upset, ripped the IV out of my arm. I'm like, you need to tell me what's causing these. What's the root of it? And marched out of the hospital and then never looked back. I'm so very clearly assertive in other parts of my life, but I was really relying on doctors to help me there. And I'm like, why am I not doing my own research? So I came across a TED Talk by Dr. Terry Walls called Minding Your Mitochondria. It's all about how she essentially went from in a wheelchair with MS to participating in races, taking care of the foods that help optimize our mitochondria. And I thought that was really brilliant. Then started to dig into, okay, what causes a migraine biologically? Okay, what's happening to my cells? Like reverse engineering it to start to treat it from there. And then I sent out lab work separate from my insurance to test for a celiac diagnosis. I had done blood tests, and at the time they can be 60% inconclusive, which is a large margin of error. And so when I got those test results back that I outsourced on my own, it came back that I have celiac disease, that I am also intolerant to casein and soy. So to me, that was the greatest day of my life. If this is the answer, this is awesome.
Before this, though, you never thought about food being a cause.
I thought I was eating healthy. Like I always believed in food is medicine to a degree. I still enjoyed things for sure. But as someone who competed in sports, I always thought I was eating healthy. I was doing whole grains, PBs and J's, soy milk, all the things I thought were right. And come to find all those things were actually the opposite.
Bad. That's me in college. Soy milk every night. You know?
And so 3 months of just changing my diet, all those symptoms went away. And then I look back on things that I thought were interesting in school. Like my lab partner and I in high school rewrote the words to a Beastie Boys song about the mitochondrial function. You got to fight for your right to ATP.
Why did I not find this so I could play this? Wow, I did not do my research properly.
And it's like, oh, you already, like there are already these little nuggets that were put in front of you. In 7th and 8th grade, for my science fair project, I wrote about ADHD potentially being an autoimmune dysfunction and how you could treat it with nutrition. And I made a prototype of a bar for kids with different nutrients. And I'm like, you've clearly had interest in this, but was never actually listening. So it all made sense in hindsight. So I'm rolling through 3 months of this diet change. I feel great. My colleagues are like, you can tell that you feel better. You've always been a really positive person, but you're like, now there's light in your eyes. You're staying longer. What are you doing differently? And I lost a lot of weight, inflammation, because I'm still the same amount of strength. I'm still an athlete. It's just the shape all changed. It was all this inflammation my body was holding on to. And that had to do with the little reset that I started to incorporate with myself. And then when I got clients, started incorporating with them. And 10 years later, it's now known as my gut reset. But so I'm doing that for 3 months. I get asked by someone at work, what are you doing differently with your diet? And I've always cooked, and they're like, oh, it'd be really cool if you could cook for me. And I'm like, I don't cook for people. I I manage multi-million-dollar contracts, like I'm a douchebag. And they're like, well, I'm willing to pay a private chef this much money. And I joked that in San Francisco, you can make good money and still be broke.
Yes.
So
it's $108,000. That's like the poverty line. There's more?
120,000 family mortgage.
120,000. Wow.
Wow, the Bay Area is really doing one over. So I saw it as side hustle money. Like, awesome. I'll have some money to play with. So I had that person as a client, and then I was getting my wisdom teeth removed, and I had to get put under because of the way they were coiled. And when I came to, my oral surgeon was like, I'm so excited you're gonna be my private chef. So I pitched myself under the influence of drugs as a private chef, not even as my tech career for almost the last 10 years. And so those are my first two clients. And I was doing that on the side. And then one day I just went into exhaustion because I'm still having my regular workload. And I had to choose between going all in on this or staying in tech.
Did you like your work in tech?
I didn't dislike it. So I was known as a flight hazard. I would go into an organization. I would crush it. Like, I'd come in, they'd give me like crap leads day one. And I'd be like, hey, you guys want some extra numbers on the board? I closed some of your crap leads today. And they're like, how? I'm like, you just listen to what the company needs. You talk to the engineering team. They facilitate it. And so I would do that. I would create new sources of revenue. I would help build out teams. I would crush my quota. And then I'd get to a point where I'd be bored. So like there was one month, one quarter, it ended with me at 500% of my quota. I helped carry the team that quarter. And everyone's super pumped. They're going to go celebrate. And my senior vice president comes over. He's like, we're going to go out. And at this point, he and I become friends. And we're all going to go out. What's wrong? And I'm like, I don't care. I just don't care. And so I would do that every 2 years thinking like maybe it's the environment, but it's clearly I love the build. And once the build's over, I'm like, I'm bored. Also, I'm selling cloud. That doesn't feel great to me. But I had a good career, but it wasn't great. So
P.S. This is all from a high school dropout, by the way. I hope y'all hearing this. Very inspiring. That's what I'm saying.
Well, I come from, I'm the first person in the whole family extended not to go to college. I'm like the opposite immigration story. I'm surrounded by academics, engineer, biochemist, professor of arts and things like that. And so I'm like the black sheep.
I know that had to be its own journey as well.
Oh yeah, but I get a lot of hat tips for what I've created business wise, but that's always just a little bit of the surface. There's like all these other things that make up a human being. I've posted several times, if you had any idea what people are dealing with and still showing up, there's no way you wouldn't think of every human being as an absolute miracle.
That is why I do this podcast. It's just the idea that everybody has gone through or is going through something that it's either hard to carry, a challenging time that's hard to carry, but they keep showing up. There's people who keep showing up, and I want to highlight these people because that's going to be inspiring for somebody else who's going through the same things you're going through. So that's what Rebuilding the Beast is about. So welcome.
I love that. Here we are.
Yeah.
And so I took the day off from work to decide if I'm going to go all in because I hit that exhaustion point. And I was at the Ferry Building. It's fun talking to someone that knows San Francisco because when I say these things, they'll know. Usually they're like, "What's the Ferry Building?" So I'm at the Ferry Building.
A lot of people here are also San Francisco natives, people that listen.
Right on.
Yeah,
I love it. Yeah. So I'm at the Ferry Building with a colleague of mine deciding if I'm going to go all in on this or not. And I'm walking into the Ferry Building. I see a figure walking towards me, and being the gentleman that I am, I open the door for them. And the gentleman stops and he goes, "Oh my goodness, thank you so much." And I'm like, "Whoa, thank you for noticing. You're welcome." And he goes, "Chivalry's not dead." And we part ways. And then my friend goes, "Are you an idiot? Are you that obtuse? You took the day off from work to decide if you want to be a chef. And you are looking for signs. And you open a door for Tyler Florence. If that's not a sign for you, I don't know what is." And if you don't know who Tyler Florence is, he's an incredible chef. Wayfair Tavern. He has the Miller and Lux at the stadium. He has a couple of restaurants in Mill Valley. Very like an amazing chef. I love his work. And she's like, you were looking for a sign and you opened the door to a chef. What is wrong with you? I was like, yep, that's the sign. That's it. I went home, put in my notice. Was like, that's it. And I had tweeted at him, like, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize it was you. I was like in a space. And he's like, oh, that was such a great interaction. And then fast forward several years, we have an interaction. And I tell him, I go, not putting the pressure on you, but I use that interaction as a sign to leave corporate. And he goes, I remember you and I remember that interaction. And so I went all in on it. And this is where it's timing, luck, opportunity, and follow through. Nobody was doing what I was doing at the time. I was able to secure paleochef.com, which is a miracle story in itself. If someone had been at the right place at the right time, I wouldn't have gotten it, but I got paleochef.com. And so if you Google personal paleo chef, I'm the only one showing up. So athletes and actors and performers are Googling looking for somebody that does work like this. I'm the only one showing up at the time. And so that got me in the door with pretty big names very quickly, but it's the actual application of talent and product of work that allowed me to create what I have over the last 10 years. So that's the inception of paleochef.com. And
what is paleo and why was that the avenue you chose?
So being intolerant to gluten, casein, and soy, if I say that to somebody, they're like, what? But paleo is starting to get popular. So it's just easier to say I'm following a paleo diet. And paleo at its core, or the way it's defined, is no gluten, no dairy, no soy, no legumes, no beans, no processed sugar. Essentially, whole vegetables, fruits, nuts, proteins. It gets this bad rap for being all carnivore, all meat. My philosophy, though, is paleo. What works for me,
I saw that.
It's not going to work for you.
I saw that. I was going to ask about that. So yeah. That's very clever.
Yeah, and I don't love the word paleo, but it's a talking point. And then I can tell people it's individual. So when I'm working with my clients, the way we identify their paleo is by doing really extensive gut testing, blood testing, sweat testing, spit testing, and no two clients have the same meal programming or performance programming. It is very individualized. So I really get frustrated with people that really tout one diet as a fix-all, because it's true. What works for me is not going to work for you. And what works today may not work in 6 months. Our body is changing. Our environment is changing. Women, we're changing. We have a different week for our cycle. We should be eating to support that. We should be having our activity match that.
So what does it mean what do the different tests tell you? So you have a blood test. You said you have a gut test.
So blood tests can tell you a lot of different things. I'm looking when I'm running it, and I'm working with doctors. So I have I call it my little team of performance avengers. I have a sports scientist I like to work with, a functional medicine doctor, regular practitioner. I have PTs I like to work with, and they all help me with whoever the client is at the time. And so we're looking at full blood panel. We want to see everything that's going on, your hormones, your cholesterol, your glucose. We want to see inflammatory markers. We want to see where your nutrient levels are. We want to see any responses to food from that inflammatory standpoint. We want to see if there's any genetic predispositions, depending on how deep we're going to go. We want to see your cortisol, which can be spit testing. We want to see how much fluids are you losing during activity. It can get super, super detailed. That's not for your average person. Obviously, I'm talking about elite level athletes. And then with my entertainers and my actors, we're probably not doing the spit and sweat testing. We're sticking to just basic blood work. Where are your nutrient levels? How can we optimize that? How's your gut function? How can we optimize that? And we start to optimize through food first. And then we utilize supplements as needed on top of that. And then we retest and we change as your body changes.
I have heard amazing reviews about what you do. And what I would like to hear from you is success stories. What has been some of your favorite stories, kind of like yours, where
100% success rate?
No, I understand. But what has been some of the best transformations that you've seen in people, whether it's recovering from some kind of sickness, trying to figure it out like yours, or
So without using names, we had one client who was going into a shoulder surgery. It's really hard to say together. And they're an entertainer. They have to be on set at a certain time. They're doing stunt work. So we did a pre-surgery nutrition that gets them ready for that, reduces all inflammation, gets them prepared for recovery. Then we did an optimized recovery post-surgery, and they recovered 4 weeks ahead of what the doctors predicted. Even the doctor was like, this is incredible. They're able to get back on set in time and be prepped from like a physical standpoint. Because after surgery, there's rehab and you have to rebuild core and things like that for the stunt work. So that's awesome. Another client of mine in WWE, he's older. And so it's harder when you're older, but you can make it easier. And so he wanted to be in the best shape of his life prior to a bigger event. And I think it was right before he was turning 40. And so he posted about it. You'll see his transformation of not only looking and feeling his best, but also being able to extend his career. I worked with...
That's a very physically demanding sport.
It's
wrestling.
crazy.
I thought everything was fake. You ever watch wrestling?
Well, professional wrestling is fake. Greco-wrestling in high school.
Oh my gosh. No, but
I'm
like
talking about
always,
WWE.
Yeah, but
it's scripted,
WWE,
but it's still
yeah,
athletes.
they're still.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had a friend who was there last weekend trying out for it, and then was explaining to me everything that was going on. It makes me watch it in a way different light right now.
And then as you get older, that's insane stress on your body, and he's one of the faces of that. So to extend his career is amazing. I worked with a soccer player, one of the greatest, and again, how do we extend his career? He had one of the best comeback seasons, and it's not just nutrition. Nutrition helps, of course, it's the whole team around him. That was amazing, the number of goals that were hit last year before the injury. And then what else can I talk about? Oh, a lot of the people who are trying to get ready by a certain date for physically demanding wins. There's that. Then there's the clients who they think they're doing everything right, but there's like this one pain point or there's a cognitive decline and they're not sure what it is. And I just ask for one test that's not typical, and we find out that it's just one ingredient you would never think of. And it doesn't seem like much. Like I just had to turn one lever. And so you do what you do long enough that the thing that doesn't seem obvious to other people is so clear to you. I saw a post by, I think it's, is it Level? No, Vision, Visualize. Do you follow that account? He takes cool sayings and then turns it into this cool visual representation. And it's like an invoice. And it was like cost to turn the screw, $1. Cost to know which screw to turn, $9,000.
Wow, that's so funny. My dad just sent me a story like that last night about a man who goes to fix something, and he goes to fix an engine, and he goes there, and they've been trying to figure it out for a long time, and nobody knows what to do. They call this man in. He comes in with his tools or whatnot. He looks around after inspecting it for a while, takes the hammer and just taps one thing.
Yeah.
For like 5 seconds, and this engine starts.
Yeah.
He sends them a bill for $10,000, and he says, "Well, tapping the screw with a hammer, $20. Knowing where to tap was $9,980, and it's amazing. Yeah, that's crazy. You just said that.
Because when I'm trying to coach other consultants or entrepreneurs or even people negotiating contracts, I'm like, know your worth, and your worth is not the amount of time you spent, but the amount of time it took for you to become that pro at what you are. And that's another thing that I think helps me get the kind of client, because my business is referral only. And I think it's because I have the reputation of like, she knows what she's doing and she's not going to fold, and like, just come correct. Because that way we all win. But so other wins, there's a lot of the people who are in the spotlight, athletes and entertainers who are in a lot of physical pain, just like I was, but it's not public knowledge.
I've realized this too. So actually, with me going through my rehab journey, I've got to see and run into a lot of people. I'm like, wow, you too? It's like, yeah, I do my own stunts. So I got this going on. I got that going on.
Yeah. And the wins they have within just 4 to 6 weeks of, I woke up and I didn't have a headache. I woke up and I didn't have indigestion. I'm able to finally go on stage, and it's really awesome. And people care more about the, the physical aesthetic look of the win, or I mean, there's a lot of athletes out there that are doing great, great, great things, and they have people like me on their team that will never be named or heard of. But it's like those little things are because you reduce the noise in the body, and that really happens across all of my clients. A lot of my clients come in pain that they think is normal, and then you fix it. And again, nobody knows they're in pain and they're showing up, but they're able to show up better now.
Talk to somebody who is not able to afford the Paleo Chef, but they're listening to you right now and they want to take back control over their health and they need some guidance. Maybe you can give them some advice on how to go about discovering.
Really general question. So I have to figure out how to, because I always say it depends, right? Like health as far as diet, movement, which is concerned. There are some tests that you can get through your insurance. So your basic blood work you can get through your insurance. Asking for a nutrient test you can get through your insurance. And so it's going and finding a doctor who's not necessarily smarter than you, but curious. Because then they're going to keep doing the investigative work to help optimize you. If you don't have access to a doctor, it can be really confusing out there as far as what's healthy. And it's really just starting. I like to start with like an elimination-based diet if we're going to start from a diet perspective, and reintroducing foods over the course of 6 to 8 weeks to try to find what works for you if you're doing it completely on your own. But that could also look so different for different people. So if someone's like, I have headaches, or I feel like I could lose some weight, or I have trouble sleeping, the nuance of that can always be different.
I got one more question about that. Well, not even
no,
about
as many
that.
more questions do you want? Because you asking a question will help me flesh out.
So when you walked in, actually, let's talk about you, right? You are a beast yourself, right? You have had to rebuild in different ways, right? Career-wise, you start off as a one-woman show, and now you have a team, and you've built this company and this business. First thing you said when you walked in, he was like, when I'm talking to people about starting a business, first thing I say is don't. And if you really want to, and you still want to, then it means you're in the right business. Well, talk to me about that hardship, about starting off, and maybe some of your fondest memories as you started to create your team and the people that you picked.
Well, I just started to really build a meaningful team in the last year or so. And the reason why I tell people don't is I thrive in uncertainty. Certainty terrifies me. I don't like certainty. I don't know what that is or where that goes into childhood, but I thrive in uncertainty. I say the greatest source of opportunity is in uncertainty. And so I'm
gonna write that down.
I love that upside. And most people are terrified of uncertainty. And so starting your own business, that's all it is. Now, I think having a what you quote unquote regular career also has uncertainty. But it does give the idea of more safety. And this is, I think, from being a tennis player, the win or loss is on you. You're on the court by yourself. And business, when you're in the leadership role, the win or loss is on you. I like that responsibility. I don't like relinquishing that control to someone else. When I was in tech, we went through like 2 or 3 different rounds of layoffs and acquisitions and layoffs, and the teams would be distraught, and you'd have to go in and talk to your manager like, how you doing, kid? Are you gonna okay? I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. I'll just get another job. They're like, but how are you gonna do it? I'm like, why is this we'll just go get another job? And I didn't understand why that was, having that pulled out from under you was so terrible. Cause I'm like, there's always another opportunity right around the corner. There will always be that. And if not, you'll create it. So the reason why I say don't is there is nothing wrong with wanting the safety and the simplicity of a 9 to 5 or something of that nature. I don't thrive in that environment. I thrive in the uncertainty and creating the own schedule and creating something really big and taking that risk. There's no right or wrong, but I say don't because most people are like that. And then there's just one of my friends that sold a business, $50 million. He said, you're going to bust your butt, spend all this money to build your business, and then you're going to bust your butt and spend all this money to protect your business. and it's true. And again, if that doesn't scare you, if the desire to create something is greater than the fear or that's going to be a lot of work, then you should do it. In the beginning, it was difficult to see a path to creating a team because I started as a private chef and then moved into taking some of those products that I'm making for my chef, those recipes, and turning it into a consumer product, which is Fat Fudge. And I was still doing that on my own too. It was an in-house job of like hand packing something with a ketchup bottle over a scale. And that was something that I launched with $600 and built it to almost $1 million as just me. And then I took advice from the powers that be outside. They're saying, you got to scale, you got to build a team, you got to go fast. Attempted to do that. And then everything that I built dismantled in 6 months. And I had to rebuild from not scratch, but from negative. That's a whole story in itself around having a co-packing disaster, not having any inventory. All the capital was in that run. The folks I had working with me were treating the business like it's a $50 million business rather than a startup. And all of that's my responsibility. And so having to rebuild that and then look at it from like, okay, well, how does the performance stuff really scale with a team? How does Fat Fudge now rebuild with the team and the right people? And part of it is, from my opinion, not necessarily having all the experience in the world to be in those roles, but having the right, if as cliche it sounds, the right attitude. So if I find the people with the right attitude and the same curiosity that I described around, you want a doctor with curiosity, I can teach them skills. I can teach them and provide them opportunities to give them the experience. When before I was looking just for the experience, so it created an environment that sort of felt like it was sucking the life out of me. Now I have team members and vendors who are cut from a similar cloth around, if we don't know the answer, we'll find it. If someone tells us no, we'll tell them why that was incorrect. And so that's been a rebuild for the last, since the pandemic started, because that disaster happened right before the pandemic with the CPG business.
Well, you're a beast in the way that you think, and the fact that you like uncertainty, you thrive in uncertainty is what you said. And in the way that you just look at problems, it seems like you're a great problem solver. But some humans like us out there, we deal with a lot of doubt in the face of challenges. Do you have those moments as you're building your business and you're dealing with those things? And how do you get through those moments of, is this company going to be okay? Who is then your guiding force? Or have you ever gotten like a line from somebody when you were in a doubting moment? It's like, okay, I'm going to be fine. I just got to keep working.
I have been through far worse than having a business be dismantled. I've had traumas in my life. There's a period in my life where I slept in my car for 3 months, trying to get away from trauma. And I've rebuilt my self-esteem multiple times. I constantly have doubt and uncertainty. They go hand in hand. But it's an element of like, I know who I am. Sometimes I question if who I am is worthy. And when I have those moments, there just seems to be something about the universe that when I'm having those moments, I get an influx of messages from people who have no idea what's going on, but are like, thank you so much for X, Y, and Z. I'm able to do this or that, or win stories. And I like to think the universe has my back in that way, where I'm still allowed to be human and have the doubt. And it really times when I have those moments of doubt, when I'm on my knees, like sobbing, crying, that someone's like, I was able to submit my college application because of something you did, or I was able to go in an interview, or this is the first time I've felt like myself physically because of the work that you help facilitate. So I don't know why at times like that. So it's somebody, because I'm not someone to really go and seek advice or like pep talks. And part of it has to do with the philosophy, whether it's right or wrong, is it's not necessarily wise to talk about your problems with people who are incapable of providing a solution. And what I am doing, I don't know a lot of people that are doing the things that I'm doing and the way that I'm doing it. And when I used to try to vent, I would get unsolicited advice that was not applicable. And I found it to be like a stressor on my energy. So I go inward and try to figure it out. But yeah, I have massive doubt all the time. And I don't think the doubt will ever go away on the outcome of the project, but I don't have doubt in my own ability to overcome.
Amazing.
So if I have to pivot, I will know when. I haven't gotten the definitive pivot.
There's even the reason why this podcast exists is because I had a conversation with my mom at one of my lowest moments, right? I was in the NBA playing the championships and doing all this stuff. And then months later, I was in a wheelchair for 6 months. And I'm 6'11", but in a wheelchair, I'm 4'11"? And so my whole perspective on life changed. During that time, I kept asking the question, why me? Because I always felt like, well, I work this hard and I did all these things. I do the right things. I'm bargaining with God like,
Yes.
yo, what's the deal, yo? And my mom said to me, she said, you know, the only person who doesn't have problems is the guy who is 6 feet under. And he wishes he had problems because that's a human thing.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe God gave you your mountains so you can show others it can be moved. And the idea about it is you're the person that gets to win with this story. I don't care how it goes. This is your story. So even when you say that you don't really like soliciting advice from people who can't help your situation, because a lot of times people don't understand your journey. You're the one that gets to really face it and deal with it the way that you want to deal with it. So this is what we're doing here today. We're also sharing our stories because somebody else out there who is dealing with something similar can draw inspiration and keep writing their own story as well. You know? So thank you for that. Let's talk about Fat Fudge. The recipe for Fat Fudge went viral. What was it like creating something that everyone wanted, but it was just you at the time?
Again, it's one of those like, listen to the call. I didn't set out to create a product. It was just a recipe that I was making. And again, all the synergies of things is prior to being paleo, I loved goo packets. They were like my go-to, goo packets and protein bars. And I joke, like my friends, we would go to Vegas and they all participate in drugs and I don't use drugs, but I got a rally. So I'd be like with my goo packet, like, I'm going to keep up with you guys. And then going paleo and realizing that there's a lot of ingredients and protein bars and those goo packets that don't sit well with me. I'm like, oh, one day I have to come up with like a replacement for that, shelve that idea. Then I'm doing consulting with the Oracle sailing team. They're talking about how they need something on the water for the team to refuel. And the best I could come up with a solution then was grinding chia seeds down to a powder, beefing it up with whatever liquid or fatty fat that you want, and then throwing in the nutrients you want. So there was that idea. Didn't love the idea, but it was the best I could come up with at the time. Then thinking about the coffee that I was making for my clients. I called it unicorn fuel as a joke. So I was like, oh, it powers all the individual unicorns in you. And then that coffee recipe went viral. It was voted best coffee hack of like 2016 or something like that, or second best, pardon me. And it was all the spices you'd find in original cacao. So I had a canister of all the spices together sitting on my counter. Separate from that, I'm making a dessert called halawa. In Egypt, we call it halawa. I think other places called it halva. It's a tahini and honey based dessert. And it's very temperamental the way you make it. You have to get the temperature just right on the honey before you add the tahini, and then goes into a cold process. And if you miss that moment, you lose the texture that you're going to get and it becomes like a sticky fudge. I was multitasking, missed that moment, and I was like, it's just going to be fudge. So I took the canister of all the ingredients for that coffee. It has the cacao, the turmeric, the maca, dumped it in there, set it in the freezer. We'll make fudge. The next day I'm eating it. It is delicious. And then all those moments came together at one. And it was
Wow.
like, if you adjust the macros on this and the amount of honey, it can become a functional fudge. So I jokingly posted again. Here's the recipe. It's called functional fudge. It'll fuel your inner unicorn. That recipe went viral. That's where everyone's posting in sandwich bags. Like, you have to turn this into a product. Like, I don't know how to turn it into a product. So I sat on Periscope, RIP, with a unicorn head. And I was like, okay, here's the deal. I'm going to put 50 orders up on Shopify. If you guys buy the 50 orders, I'll figure out how to turn it into a product. So that went up. It sold out in an hour. So 50 means 60 individual packets. Sold out in an hour. This is when I had like 10,000 followers on social. And it wasn't necessarily that it sold out in an hour. It's who bought it. I didn't even know those people were following me. And there was just something about having people that I respect at that level. One, being paying attention to anything I'm doing. And then buying the product. I was like, hope I don't say anything stupid on the internet. Didn't know these people were like following what I was doing. So I hand packed 600 packets with a ketchup bottle in my apartment, sent it. We did it again next Monday, then the next Monday, then the next Monday. And I would have the 50 orders available at 10 a.m. Then it would get to the point where it hit 10 a.m. and it would sell out in under a second. And I would get emails. What is this, a Beyonce ticket? And I would be like, you guys, the recipe is still on the website if you want to make it at home. Like, it's selling out, which was really cool. So then it was like, okay, now we need to figure out a way to scale this. Same thing, very honest, told them, my audience, I'll go to a co-packer. Co-packers have really high minimums. If you guys want to pre-order for the next 30 days, I'll take those pre-orders and I will put it towards a co-packing run. And in 6 months, you will either get a refund or a product at your doorstep. And in 30 days, $90,000 in pre-orders came in on a product that did not technically exist. And that's how I was able to start the bigger part of the business. And then we did that for about a year, and then it all came crumbling. and now we're rebuilding in a really good place. Yeah,
that's awesome. But how did it feel? Because it seemed like at some point, I read that companies like Erewhon and Whole Foods went to sell Fat Fudge. And that thing that started on Periscope and kind of just messing around turned into a real thing. How did that feel?
I have yet to actually absorb how it feels. Then this is years in. I would see it on the shelves and it just wouldn't register. Like, Erewhon was the first retailer. They got it when it was still being hand packed. And I'm really honest about what I'm good at, what I'm not good at. Like, Whole Foods, the VP of sales in the Rocky Mountain region was buying it on his own from the website, then reached out and was like, I really want to have this product. And I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just one person building it. And he's like, we'll take you through the process and help you. So I got a lot of help. And when I found out that things like, I didn't know what free fill was, which is where you have to give product a certain amount for free to see if it can test. I didn't have to do that. I didn't know what that was because I just bought it right out. And my friends who have CPGs, they're like, how did you even get those passes? I'm like, because I don't pretend like I know something that I don't know, or I don't pretend like I'm big time. I'm telling people, I'll know what I'm doing. If you want the product, like, this is where I'm at. And I still, to this day, have yet to really feel it. This season is the first season I've been able to work with an athlete on one of my home teams. So it hits different. And walking through the locker room and seeing Fat Fudge in the organization. And it's because of my client, not necessarily the organization getting Fat Fudge, but like just seeing it there, it still doesn't register. I don't know what that is. I don't know if it's a protective mechanism. I don't know if I'm so in the grind of like, I'm not pausing to really high five myself. I don't know what it feels like yet. If I can just be so humanly honest about it.
I was this morning, I was listening to an acceptance speech from Drake, and he said something about the idea of kind of along those lines of he never really had the time or never took time to applaud himself or celebrate the wins, because he was constantly trying to build the next thing. And the way he said it was more like he never knew if he was doing it right. He just was the whole time just
doing
doing it. Yeah. And people are looking from the outside thinking, well, you're doing all this amazing things. But the whole time he just kept wondering, like, yo, I don't know if I'm really doing this right yet. And I wonder if that's also another way to create successful things, if the successful people just constantly keep building because they never felt like they've gotten to where they want to get to yet. You know what I mean?
Maybe it varies from person to person
Mm.
why they keep going versus pausing. I mean, if you have a lot of people sitting in the seat, maybe you'll be able to extract a common thread. Like the team I have now, they're really good at pausing and celebrating, and I want them to celebrate, but I don't take that time. They go out of their way to make sure that they celebrate me, which I think is really sweet. Yeah, I am not the best at pausing and high fiving because I think I also know it can all go away.
Yeah, that's true.
And I think because I am also responsible for other people, that I'm working towards the next thing to make sure they're all taken care of, type of thing.
Talk to me about your 7-day reset program. What is the success rate of the people coming back after those 7 days?
So the gut reset with my clients is different than the gut reset that I put out to the public, in that when I run it with my clients, it's an exploratory week. So it's the week that we do when I first meet them. They do fasting mimicking protocol, which is a broth that's specific to spices and ingredients that I grew up with that naturally have healing components. So it's 3 days of this specific broth, and then it's 4 days of the same nutrient dense food. So it's combining a fasting mimicking, an elimination diet, and a nutrient dense diet. And I do that for 1 week to essentially remove any noise before I run any labs on them. Because if a client comes to me for the first time and they just went ham on pizza and Cheetos and all of that, our labs are probably going to slant towards what was happening as a result of that. And I want to know what's happening without the noise to really figure out where their baseline is. So we run that for a week, and then we run labs. And based on their experience during that week, because, if you get a rash, that tells me something. If you get a headache right away, that tells me something. If your stool actually stabilizes, that tells me something. So it's an investigative week. Then we do our labs. Then we put together a program. And so a lot of clients will lose massive amounts of inflammation. Headaches will start and then start to go away. And my audience was like, you never share what you do with your clients with the public. And part of that, again, too, is like, I can help my clients one-on-one, but like, you tell me to work with a goat, no problem, full confidence. I can figure that out. You tell me to like share something with 10 strangers for them to do on their own, I'm like, but I have so many questions. So I took what I do with my clients, created a general format of it, put together some mindset stuff in there, put together a journaling component. So somebody could, to answer your question from earlier, take the reset, use that as a jumping off point for themselves, take all those notes, and then take those results to a functional medicine doctor and start the journey. So I launched that to the public about a year ago. It's been downloaded over 1,300 times. And I did it for, again, follow the signs, did it based on what I've been doing with my clients for the last 10 years. I'm doing it for this investigative stuff, but then the feedback we're getting is like, it helps me with my Crohn's. My symptoms of traumatic brain injury for the last 10 years is starting to dissipate. And it's just showing the link between inflammation and lingering symptoms, and also showing the link between the state of your gut biome, and how it links to inflammation and other symptoms. So the wins vary. There's a bubble on my Instagram page that I share when people share what's going on with them. And those are people that have chosen to do the gut reset on their own. Then we revisit the gut reset for clients as needed. So after bouts of travel, before and after an injury, it'll get modified a little bit. It's not a cleanse. It's not a detox. It's very much what I call it, a reset for the system.
I love it. This journey about learning about gut health, did any of this teach you about life? Like, whether
It's forever changing.
did you learn more about relationships, mental health, boundaries? What part of this journey has been touched by the journey of learning about gut health?
So this might be going like more sciencey. There is a link between your health and the way you show up in relationships. I don't know if that's necessarily the question, but if you feel better, if you're optimized and you feel good, you will show up as a better person, and you'll show up in your relationships as a better person. If you are sickly or in pain, you could be experiencing anxiety and a depression and labeling you as such, when really it could just be linked to better nutrition. And then that person who's depressed or in pain is making decisions in life from a perspective of decision in pain versus making decisions in life from this, like, my world is my oyster. That's more like specific. Do you want more of a
Oh
a
no,
spiritual?
I actually really like that. There's a lady I had on, um her name, well, the topic was IBS.
Mm-hmm.
And we were talking about that syndrome, and she said that this diet did what no other doctor could for her in 3 years. She lost weight.
Mm-hmm.
She was able to feel good again. I guess maybe let's go back to the um, stereotypes or the myths of paleo diet.
Mm-hmm.
One of them is that you have to eat a lot of meat.
I don't know where. Maybe it's because people are like, this is the caveman diet.
Hmm.
Is that? What do you think? Why do you think paleo gets the meat rap?
I don't know. Do you know that the paleo diet is the #1 Googled diet?
Still?
Yeah.
Hell yeah. That's
People
good for
try to
my
figure
search
it-
result.
I Googled it a couple of times
I
trying to
just
figure
looked
it
it
out.
up. It said
See, you
it's the
Googled it
caveman-
too.
It's the caveman diet.
Maybe because it says caveman diet that gets associated with
They
with
think
meat.
you only eat what the caveman.
Right. Right. But if you think about hunts, you're lucky if you get a kill. So you're actually really berries and nuts and whatever you can get your hands on. But it gets confused with the carnivore diet. So you got your paleo diet, you got your carnivore diet, you got your keto diet, you got your vegan diet, you got your plant-based diet, you got your carnivore plus diet. I've so
tried
terrifying.
a few of these.
Which
and
ones?
I've tried vegan. I went vegan for 6 months, and I've tried vegetarian. I've tried pescatarian.
Yep.
I just keep jumping around just to see how my body feels with each one.
And how do you feel with each one so far?
I actually like what I'm on right now, which is the diet of just I eat everything except for I'm allergic to gluten. Not fully celiacs, but
Gluten sensitivity.
yeah, it gives me the migraine and all those things that you had. I actually could see myself in that because I get migraines pretty bad. I get the tunnel vision.
Yeah.
And I throw up if it gets too bad, and then
It's awful. I
I
don't wish
started
it on my
getting
enemy.
nosebleeds too. So I
I
started
used
to
to
like
get those.
it
Yeah.
started to progress. That's actually why I did the test, the blood test, and I found out it was a gluten allergy. So when I stopped doing that, then it kind of started to become way less scarce, way more scarce. Okay, maybe can you tell us, like, I know it's paleo and it's catered to each person.
Sure.
But give me like an example of breakfast, lunch, and dinner on a paleo diet.
It depends.
No, I know that was coming.
It depends. So I like to stick to whole foods.
Okay.
No one got sick from eating whole foods, meaning protein, vegetables, fruits, nuts, and limiting or omitting processed foods. Your heavily processed breads, pastas. Like, I'm not saying get rid of those if you don't have an actual reaction to them, but limit them and focus on whole foods, potatoes, yams, all of those things. And staying away from or keeping them as treats, the cookies, the cakes, the Cheetos, the soda, all of that. So, like, if you look at what I eat, for example, like this morning I make myself a little like moringa tonic, which is just a leaf considered close to matcha, has some antioxidants in there. And I'll do a dairy-free yogurt mixed with some flax seeds, some blueberries and nuts, a couple of eggs. No one's going to get sick from eating that unless you have an allergy to those things, and that's where the depends come in. I'll probably do some leafy greens. I'm a big fan of leafy greens like chard and dandelion greens. And when I say these things, I'm thinking like dandelion greens help support my liver. So I have a little bit of that going on in my head with some fish. Tonight, I might do a steak and some avocado and some yams. Because those are foods I know my body responds well to. And if I'm going to do pasta, because I'm celiac, I'll do like jovial cassava pasta. It's just really focusing on things that are not processed will do you good, and making sure you're staying hydrated. The depends comes into like, I love Brussels sprouts, but they wreck me. So I don't eat Brussels sprouts. Yeah, I have an inflammatory response to it on my blood work. And then when I eat it, my body's like, didn't we just tell you in the blood work?
Mine is tomatoes.
Tomatoes?
And grapefruit. That was the weird thing.
The two?
That's what showed up in my blood test.
And you do like the MRT test that shows like the red, the green.
Yeah.
So that test is really interesting. There's some fights around it around doctors. Some doctors are like, that test is not real. It's not accurate. Yeah, because
some people say it's if you have eaten a lot of it recently, then it shows up as inflammatory. I don't know. Which
is interesting because I never eat gluten and it shows up as inflammatory for me. So the way I tell this, what way I go back to doctors with that is what I love about talking to some doctors is they'll give me a perspective or something I absolutely have no knowledge on. And then vice versa, I'll give them a perspective on something they wouldn't have thought to think in that way when it comes to nutrition. I think as a cardiologist was on the news and he was like, if you want to know anything about nutrition, don't ask a doctor. And so the way I use that test is it does shift. You can retake that test and you'll have a different response at other times. And so if you're someone who is trying to recover from a surgery or you're a performance athlete and you're in my camp, I will redo the test and continue to move things around based on those results, not necessarily because it is the end all be all, because I'm trying to optimize the best chance of removing the noise in your body. So you can retake that and move things around. So I will retake the MRT test. There's also other types of tests that are more specific, but then we get into the science of things. But yeah, Brussels sprouts, not my friend. But
one food that you could eat every day for the rest of your life.
Honestly, do you think anybody could really eat one food every day?
I could eat burritos every day.
That's a whole group of foods.
I said one food. That's a
meal.
That is a meal.
No,
it is. Listen, you put it all together. When you can put it all together, it's one food.
That's not a food.
That's why it's one word. Burrito.
That is like cheating the system.
Okay, since you know the parameters, now you know the parameters. Huh?
No, what's your one food? Like
something that I could eat every day.
Yeah. Like peanut butter. You eat peanut butter.
Peanut butter. Every single day. Every day.
But could that be the only thing you eat?
No. I'm not saying that's the. See, look at you changing my question.
I'm just trying to better understand it.
Something that you could eat every day.
I'm asking questions to better understand. I think in those terms.
Something that you enjoy so much that you could eat.
I have eggs and avocado every single day.
Yeah.
And it's the easiest thing to also when you're out, because again, I have allergies, so it's harder to eat when I'm out. Any restaurant can give me avocado and eggs.
Okay.
But I love avocado and eggs.
What is the
burrito?
Yes, so
you mean you could have beans, rice, guac?
Listen, it's one word. It's one thing. Okay, you're looking too much into it. It's a burrito.
I pick Italian.
Yeah. Italian food every day.
Oh, that's a good answer too. But you can't eat Italian food. Not really. Kind of.
I'd either have to purchase certain kinds of pasta or I'll make pasta myself. I'll make
There's a place I just discovered. And I don't know how. Okay, you're a chef, so your bar is a lot higher probably than mine. There's a place in San Francisco I just discovered. It's called Mona Lisa.
I haven't been there, but I hear good things.
Bomb.
I hear really good things.
Then again, I did go there after a game at like 11 o'clock at night. So
where everything tastes amazing.
It was really, really good though.
We have so many amazing restaurants in San Francisco. I'm really glad that I got to experience San Francisco food prior to my diagnosis. Because I went to like Mongolian food and Burmese food and Brothers and all the stands, and like we have such good food. I'm glad I got to experience it prior to my diagnosis.
I am so happy I got to hear some of your story today. I always end with this question, and I just love hearing it from different people. If you could talk to your younger self, and this is the girl who felt like she would be in pain forever and was dealing with unwrapping her head before she went into the game and migraines and all the things. Knowing what you know now and living the life that you have and what you've created, what would you tell her?
Honestly, I don't know that I would say much because all those things brought me to where I am now. And the butterfly effect, like what if I felt better sooner? would I have come to this position. So I think it's just more of like, you got this, but nothing that would move it left or right. I would have, maybe I wouldn't even be sitting here.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much for sharing your story. The motto remains, you know, you will tell the story of what you overcame, and that will be someone else's survival guide. So I appreciate you sharing your story with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Mary Shenouda. Shenouda.
Shenouda.
Mary Shenouda. Hey, Festus here. I hope you liked that episode. Don't forget to subscribe, like, comment, and here's some more episodes that you might like. On this side.